Hello and welcome to Geek Spiel on Air. My name is Chris, your lovely bearded host, aka Tiny Rhino, and I have a group of folks with us tonight. We're going to start off with our guest for tonight, Crystal. Specifically, we're talking tonight about board game and tabletop podcast, and Crystal has Board Game Blitz as a podcast that they run, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But Crystal, go ahead and start us off a little bit of an intro, and what is kind of your gaming background? Like, what's been getting you into or kept you interested in board games?
I mean, we could talk all night about that probably, right. But hello, Geek Spiel listeners / viewers / all of the things. It's a pleasure to be here. I, like most people, started playing board games when I was a kid, and mostly the mass market stuff that everybody kind of played. I had a lot of the electronic girly type games like Mall Madness and Dream Phone and the other usual suspects like Life and Mousetrap. Got into hobby games in 2007 when a then coworker of mine introduced me to them. Started off with things like Power Grid and Race for the Galaxy and Betrayal at House on the Hill, Ninja Burger, stuff like that. And then after I moved to Las Vegas in 2008, I eventually started growing my own collection of games and got into the hobby real deep probably about 4 or 5 years ago now, and then started making board game content, started writing articles for a website around 3 years ago. I don't do that anymore. And then started the podcast almost 2 years ago now. So.
All right. And for a group of folks who have just started our podcast / Twitch vodcast kind of thing, we appreciate folks who come before us and show us kind of what to do. So we'll talk a lot about your content tonight. But again, thank you for what you've done the past couple of years.
Well, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure.
Of course. We're going to flip it over to the other two nincompoop, numbskulls, wonderful people we have on our show.
Not so beautiful bearded folks. Is that what you're saying?
Just because you don't have beards does not make you just not wonderful people. You're fantastic, wonderful people. But let's kick it off with Gil. Gil, hey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, man. That's a great time to be alive, so can't complain. I always say we're never as good as we want, but we're normally better than we deserve. So,
okay, all right, Gil.
Better than we deserve. Okay.
Philosophical statements down on us. All right, we're at 8:15 my time, 9:15 from the podcast Eastern. So yeah, great. Gil, why don't you tell us a little bit? Do you have, besides our show, any experience with board game / tabletop content on a kind of a podcast format?
I have not. I think this is the first. I mean, I have experience with podcasts, but not board game. Matt and I had some kind of podcast / YouTube channel for many years, and I do some fun, just some segments, some as a hobbyist for Dice Tower, but that's it. Nothing like, not professionally done. Not that podcast itself. No, this is it. You are my experience.
Oh gosh. Well, I don't know if professionally is what I would call what we're doing.
No.
But
I would not. No, I don't. No. Yeah. I just enjoy all things board game. It's just I just love to talk about board game, and and I listen to a lot of podcasts if that counts.
Yeah, that does. That will be one of our topics of conversation tonight. So keep that. What's your favorite podcast / what's been the most beneficial podcast for you kind of in your back pocket? Chris Cornell, a.k.a. Digital Carnage, a.k.a. not Chris Walters. How are you today?
Hashtag first Chris.
Hashtag first Chris.
No, I'm doing great. It's a great Easter. Had just a long day and hopefully having some fun this evening with you guys.
Okay. And what's your, besides our band of procrastinating, unprofessional individuals, what is your experience with podcasts?
So I listen to podcasts, all sorts. As far as like board games, I've never been part of a podcast aside from this one. I've been a guest on a couple back in long time ago, some Call of Duty stuff, but other than that, I listen to Dice Tower and Shut Up and Sit Down and stuff like that. But those are like the major ones that I think everyone probably listens to if they're listening to gaming podcasts.
Right.
So.
There's some pretty standard kind of routine ones, which I'm sure we'll bring up tonight. But yeah. So right before we get started with the actual content, we got to do our little spiel. So Geek Spiel on Air is PG-13 stream. We're here for all gamers to give them an opportunity to enjoy what we love most, which is gaming. Gil is showing something on his phone. Gil,
I'll just say
the Dice Tower logo.
It's not Born Game Blitz, like it's the second one.
Oh.
There it is. But we're a PG-13 stream. As I get back into it, I describe myself as Doug from Up, where if I see something, I go squirrel and I'm off it. But we're here for you all. We want to have an opportunity for you all to play games, talk games, learn about games. And so we do have the Discord app. We want to make sure that you all know that if you all want to pick up and play random board games, join us on the content in the show. Feel free to join our Discord, which is listed below in the Twitch chat, Twitch box below us. And then also we have Twitch chat going tonight. So feel free to answer or ask any of your questions or answer any of the questions we post tonight with your answers. Again, we look at chat. We want to engage with chat, and that's one of the beautiful things we do with keeping this on Twitch is that we want to interact with our audience. So don't be shy. Feel free. If you want to do something more than just lurk on the channel, go ahead and do that. The last thing is that we're here to have a good time and talk about board game podcasts. So Crystal, I'm going to kick it over to you to start us off. Will you tell us a little bit about Board Game Blitz and how did this all get started for you?
Absolutely. So Board Game Blitz started as the result of a conversation between three complete strangers on Reddit, of all places. So they're on the board game subreddit. Back in the summer of 2015, somebody posted a thread that said, "What's missing from board game podcasts?" And a whole bunch of people chimed in. And the two themes that were most prevalent in that thread were that there weren't enough women podcasters in board games and that there weren't enough short-length podcasts. At the time, a lot of the heavy hitters in board game podcasts were the longer shows, either an hour plus, in the case of like Secret Cabal, like 3 hours plus, and people were kind of missing having content that they could digest easily. And in that thread, both myself and Ambi and Cassidy all commented and said something to the effect of, "I'm a woman, I could probably do that." And we saw each other's comments. We had never spoken before, and we were like, "Hey, should we do that?" And we started talking through Reddit's messaging platform first, and then we added each other on Facebook, and we talked and planned and got to know each other for the course of the next 9 months or so before we released our first episode. And it is funny because we didn't actually meet in person until we had been releasing episodes for almost a year. So we were podcasting with each other. I mean, we were Skyping, we could see the video of each other, but we'd technically never met before. And yeah, it's been our 2-year anniversary is coming up next month. And we've got some really cool stuff planned for that I can't specifically say what it is. But I'm really excited about it. Last year we released a music video for our 1-year anniversary. We got permission from the band Sweet to parody their song Ballroom Blitz. So we did a Board Game Blitz. We did a music video and a song parody, and it was a lot of fun. We're not doing a music video this year, but we're doing something even bigger and better. So
okay, that's pretty cool. What is starting off? So we're a brand new podcast. I mean, the channel is new too. Geek Spiel's been rolling for a little while, but really producing regular content since about December. Between Table Crashers and the show, I mean, we've got 20 episodes under our belt, but it still feels like we're learning as we go, and we're very much in the beginning. So, Crystal, you all are almost 50 episodes in, right? You were just telling me earlier tonight that you've recorded in episode 50 and 51. What piece of advice do you have for a group of folks kind of creating content in such a public manner like a podcast?
I think the advice I would give to somebody is do it if you're passionate about it, and let the things that you're passionate about drive what you discuss. Because if you try and force yourself into subjects or conversations that you aren't passionate about, I think that generally tends to come through in the recording. If you pigeonhole yourself or you try and veer off of the beaten path, so to speak, then I think that the content can potentially suffer as a result. And I think that's why so many board game podcasts are so wonderful, because in almost every case, the people making them are incredibly passionate about board games and the hobby as a whole. And you can hear that passion come through in the content they're making. So even if you don't necessarily have the best recording equipment or the technical know-how, that shouldn't let that be a factor that stops you, because you can always get better at the technical stuff. You can take online courses for free. You can save up money to buy a new microphone. But as long as you have the passion, you can make a podcast, you can make a video show, you can do whatever you want to do. And we need more voices in the hobby. Like, there's already a ton of content to listen to, but more voices is always a good thing, because it gives other people better opportunities to find someone that's like them. And I think that that's awesome.
So you don't think the podcast world and the board game is saturated?
I don't think so. And that's a weird statement for me to make, because I struggle to listen to all the things that I want to listen to. But I think that's because I've become... I'm really passionate about consuming other people's content because I am a content creator. In my mind, I want to support other people that are doing the same thing I'm doing, and not just because I'm creating content. Like, it's not a thing where, oh, well, I want you to listen to my thing, so I'm going to listen to yours, but I want to genuinely support other people because I know that other people are supporting me. And honestly, there's so much good stuff. But yeah, like, there are really, really good board game podcasts. They're very well produced, and the people hosting them are wonderful, but I don't get around to listening to them for whatever reason or another. Either the hosts' tastes don't align with mine, or the subject matter isn't my favorite. And so it's nice to have options, I suppose. And board games are such a niche hobby that it feels like there's a lot, but I think there's always room for more, potentially.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel that a lot of the board game podcasts and media in general are kind of looking alternative stuff to do, even the more established one. So that's why I was asking you that, because it seems that people are trying to diversify a little bit, which
it does feel like
a bad thing.
The same formula isn't what everybody's doing now, and I think that that's great. You've got examples like This Game is Broken or Flip Flory's Super Saturday Board Game Serial, which are both kind of comedy panel shows. And I think even 2 years ago, shows like that maybe wouldn't have made as much sense. But now, because there are so many people making board game content, you can kind of go, off the beaten path a little bit more and a little easier. And it gives people a wider variety of things to listen to.
Yeah, I was going to say Captain Sugar Bear and Nerdy Point of View, which is someone who's been on our show for a little while now. They avidly describe themselves as tabletop RPGers, board game content creators, and Nerdy Point of View, I don't think ever talks. Every once in a while they'll talk about their favorite character, or I think that just recently they talked about harassment and discrimination at gaming tables. But for the most part, they also have had conversations around what's their favorite, like, Halloween movie, things like that. And so that was one of the things I was going to mention, and where I'll segue us after I ask Gil a question is, be thinking of what's your most positive or favorite thing about podcasts, but what is also something that is difficult for you to listen to. But Gil, did you have you kind of mentioned that you felt like you're seeing everyone kind of change things up. Do you have a different opinion? Do you feel like the
I'm
saturated?
I agree with her. I think there's the same talk about the board game bubble, right? And I don't think there's one. I think there's content for everybody. It's just, it seems that every other person, as including, have a podcast right now, right? And it was more that, how do you fit all those people in so there's enough time for everybody to listen? I listen to 15 different podcasts, and I would have a hard time to add more podcasts in. And I think I was my question was more like, is that a good thing? Which it is for me, and I agree with her. I love This Game is Broken. I saw Crystal was at the game all night a few weeks back, geeking on the Star Trek and all that. So I like that. I think that will make possible for more and more content to be in, so it's just people in board games seems to me to be on the brighter and smarter side of the society. People that play board game in general are, creative. And so I think there's so much that's going to be accomplished yet. I don't think we even scratch the surface of what can be possible as media and board game. We are in a point that a lot of podcast stuff are being able to survive solo on producing and making media. So, which is, I think, is a great step for the hobby in general.
Yeah. Chris, let's kick it off with you on what's your favorite thing about your board game and tabletop RPG podcast, and what is maybe something that isn't quite as interesting to you?
I'm a big person where I like to hear people's opinions on things. The biggest thing that I enjoy is hearing about different games and things that may not have ever even thought to look at before, but hearing people talk about it, it makes it great. Like a couple weeks ago, I think you talked about Pursuit of Happiness, and I was like, oh, okay, I would have never looked at that game before. And then the way you talked about it, and then now Crystal just a few minutes ago talked about, before the show, I was like, okay, this looks good, and I actually went out and bought it myself because of people's suggestions. They brought, something I'll hear on someone's podcast or video or something like that. It really reaffirms, okay, well, maybe I should give that a second look, or maybe I should start looking at these types of games. Never before had I played worker placement games until we started talking about them, and they're like, oh man, these are actually really great. It's just, I like the ability for me to really see what other people are playing and then hopefully go along with that myself and see, if I actually like it. It gives me an opportunity to branch out. That's what I like about it. Things I don't like about some of the podcasts are just, I hate it when they're always straight to the point, never deviating, never having any fun with it.
We have no fun on our podcast.
No fun whatsoever.
We never laugh or make any kind of jokes in any way, shape, or form at all.
And Chris always talks like a robot, whatever.
As monotone as possible, yes. What you don't know is behind this beard is all of my processing equipment and
circuitry. Yeah. That's not hair. Those are heat sinks.
Right. For sure. Gil or Crystal, what are your all's favorite things or not so favorite things about?
Go ahead, Gil.
All right, I'm a ladies first kind of guy, but if you insist. I think, as Chris said, I think the podcasts and media in general, YouTube and the things it opened new horizon. And not for me, I think for most people, there's a lot of games sitting on my shelf right now, some that I haven't even played. The reason I bought them is because I listened to a podcast I saw on a YouTube people that I respect and I know like games like I do. And many times I bought games that I haven't played at all before I buy, which was something I would never imagine to do before. But as I kept meeting those people, and I respect what they say. So that really helps me to make a decision and buy stuff. Maybe I didn't need it to, but still, I think that's something that I like. I like that I can relate it to people, right? You even people that you don't know that much, you relate it to people. I like that media, like podcasts and internet in general, gives a marketing side for board game industry that they would never. I mean, commercials and stuff. It's ridiculous expensive. I mean, a lot of those small publishers. This is where they got the voice out. They got their games to be known. So I think people may not realize how important the internet and the whole media creation for this hobby is important on the marketing side of board game right now. So I enjoy that. I think is that full circle, that where the publishers and the supporters can help each other in a very healthy way. What I don't like it? No, there's not much that I don't like it. I think what I don't like is sometimes people that listeners, they find that they have the right of saying things in ways, they take for granted the exposure that people that are in the media are, and take advantage of that because they are anonymous behind a little logo or something. And that's the only thing that I don't like. But the content itself, there's not much, not yet. Yeah. If I don't like something, it's because it's really bad.
Okay. Crystal, what do you have for us?
I think my favorite thing, and this kind of harkens back to what I was saying earlier about why people can and should podcast, but I love hearing people talk about something that they love. Because you can tell when somebody's reading something from a script as opposed to just talking like from their heart about something that they care genuinely about. And I love those moments, and especially when it's in the context of a larger discussion with multiple people. And it doesn't always have to be good things. Like it can be a heartfelt discussion about more serious issues as well. And I think that that's been especially good in recent years, where the gaming hobby has kind of had a light shown on it because of some problematic things involving discrimination and things like that. And I think that board game media has started to step up and address those issues in a more public forum. And I think while there's still a lot of work to be done in the hobby, I think progress is being made because more people are speaking up about the things that are problematic. And I think that that's a really good thing. And I love hearing people do that, because if people don't address those issues publicly, then the people who are experiencing them might feel like they're alone. And I think it's good to make it known that, those experiences are not necessarily unique, that they are happening to other people too. For my least favorite thing, that's kind of tough. I guess kind of going off of what Gil was saying, I think sometimes there are unfair expectations put onto board game media people. And this doesn't necessarily apply to myself, luckily at this point, since I'm only 2 years in and I'm not quite as well known as other people in the industry. But, when a board game reviewer gives a negative review, even if they do it in a respectful way, sometimes publishers or designers or just random fans of said game on the internet can get really salty really fast. And in most cases, no one was paying that person to say anything, and no one's forced you to listen to their podcast. So the expectation that they should like the same things you do or say the things that you believe, and it gets a little bit weird at times. And I know for the larger personalities, like the people over at the Dice Tower and things like that, they get a lot of pushback whenever they express a negative opinion about anything. And I don't think it's necessarily fair. And I understand that people are passionate about the things they love or the things that they created. But I think sometimes people forget to kind of take a step back and realize that, most of us, this isn't our job. This is just something that we are doing really for fun because it's something we love. And so maybe don't judge those people quite as harshly.
Well, we're all people with opinions, right? So I think one of my favorite things, but also my least favorite things, goes to what you said, Crystal, as well, about content creation, right? And how much is out there. So one of the things that's really hard about content creation, I think goes back to what you and Gil are saying, is that, our content is not going to fit all people, right? We do joke around, we have a good time, but we talk about we stick pretty much to, at least for the 5 episodes, a specific topic, and we talk about that topic, right? We don't always diverge and talk about some of the, random outside, maybe loosely connected topics. And so, for someone who's new or wanting to know new board games and things like that, this is a great place. But if you're looking for, something just goofy and off the wall, we don't always hit that mark for folks, And so that's hard, because if you come into a space and as a new podcast, one of the things that I worry about often is, are we creating good content for our viewers? Are we playing the stuff and talking about the stuff that the folks want to hear? And when I haven't seen any negative reviews, but if we were to have one right off the bat, I think that would be tough for me, even though I'm not going to appeal to all people. We're not going to be the content for all folks. And so I think that's one thing in particular that's hard about creating content and again, seeing, some of those negative comments is we're allowed to have opinions and be people. Like, again, Pursuit of Happiness is one of my favorite work placement games. And like, there's someone who's going to say that's a shitty game. Excuse my PG-13 language. I apologize. But it's not for everyone, right? And, someone's going to come on to, I assume when we talk about resource management games, like Settlers of Catan is going to come up. And I love that game wholeheartedly, but there's a lot of folks out there who are like, that was a gateway game, but I'm over it. Like, it's boring. There's so much better out there. And that's okay, but it doesn't have to result in the, I'm going to bash this podcast because they had an opinion that differs from my own. I do think one of the favorite things about podcasts for me is, again, that different content. And our producer, Matt, talked about how sometimes, having so much content out there that you want to listen and hear is sometimes really hard to keep up with. And that is really unfortunate when you're like, I want to get to Secret Cabal this week, but like, I just don't have the time. But I think the beauty of that is folks can say like, hey, today I'm looking for, some real mechanic-based content. So Secret Cabal, those are going to be my folks. Whereas someone's going, I want something goofy and fun and off the wall, and then that's where they're going to go somewhere else. And I think that's what I like about it, is there's that diversity and versatility in thought. I do love what you all are doing with Board Game Blitz and that content of adding new voices to the field, because I think that's another just issue in general, is we don't have enough diversity in content and folks creating that content. And I don't know if the three folks on the show on a regular anyways are three bearded white dudes, so like we kind of fit the stereotype, I think, of board gamers, board game content, and so on. But I think one of the things that we don't talk enough about are the voices that aren't at the table and how important those voices are. And so I love seeing folks come up with new content and being different than the again, Settlers Catan's my favorite game, those kind of things. So,
and it was tough for us when we started because we didn't want to sell ourselves as three women first. We wanted to sell ourselves as a really good board game podcast that happened to be hosted by three women. And that was really important to us because we didn't want people to listen just because we were women. Right. We wanted people to listen because we were making good content. And I think that we've succeeded in that effort, but it was tough at first because at the time there were no all-female board game podcasts, not a single one when we launched our first episode. And now there are at least 4 that I know of, less than 2 years later. And I think that that's a good thing. And there are also a lot podcasts that have either a number of women on their panels or more women on their panels than was, prior to us starting, there were really only a couple of podcasts that had any women contributors at all. And I think it's tough because if somebody gets into the hobby and they then get to the point where we got to at some point and go, man, I love board games. What else is out there about board games? And they go to look for maybe a podcast, and none of the podcasts are hosted by anybody resembling who they are as a person. Will they potentially have that moment of, oh, maybe I don't belong here? Even if no one's overtly done something to scare them away, just not seeing themselves represented could potentially be off-putting. And so we wanted to make sure, and I'm a strong believer in, if you don't see the thing that what you think should exist and you have the capability to make that thing, you should do it. And that's what we did. And I'm really proud of what we've been doing. So
I have to say you did exit, because it really didn't cross my mind until you started having this conversation. Like when I started listening to the podcast, was never crossed my mind that the reason of being women or not. So that tells me that you guys are succeeding what you're doing.
We still bring up, some of those issues like diversity in game. We don't make that the cornerstone. We don't want to be preachy. Those issues are important and we do bring them up, but we didn't want that to be the only thing that we were about, because really first and foremost we love board games and we want to talk about them.
Right.
So.
And I think this is, we talk about board game, and this is true for most hobbies right now, right? Like my other hobby is craft beer, and we have the same issues. I mean, that conversation could easily be transplanted to the podcast about that topic, and it's something that needs to be worked on, and I'm glad that it's happening. Right? I think we should be worried. We should worry anyway, but we should be more worried if nothing was happening, and that's, I think, important. And you guys are brave. I mean, you went from the podcast, and you guys have your own con and all that. That's. Man,
I mean, admittedly,
I'll be shivering to think about it.
Running a convention. First off, I should preface this with, I am not the one who formally organizes that event. It is Ambi and her friends in the San Francisco area. So everything I'm about to say is coming from the perspective of a person who didn't have to put the work in. But that being said, hosting a convention is not as difficult as you might think, because really all you have to do is rent a space and invite people to that space and call it a convention. So, I'm not trying to shortchange the people who put together our event or anything
Find
else.
the space, getting ticketing, sponsor. Yeah, sure. You made it sound so easy. Maybe I will try it now.
I was going to say, just wait 1 year. Geek Spiel's having its own con. You've heard it here. There it is.
I mean, I do help run a different convention here in Las Vegas, but I'm the third person on that team. I was brought on more to help out with like social media and the online presence of the convention and stuff like that. But we just held our 4th annual MeepleCon here in Las Vegas just 2-3 weeks ago. Oh gosh, I can't even remember. It's all a blur, and it went really well, and that's really fun. It's all for me just about spreading my love of the hobby and ensuring that the gaming community that I'm a part of has cool events and cool things to do. So.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things I want to talk about is our Twitter poll. So we posted this 2 weeks ago because, again, life happens and things happen and we had to postpone. But one of the things the thing we tweeted out is, what are you most interested in considering tabletop gaming podcasts? And we posted 4 things, which were personable hosts, live gameplay, quote unquote celebrity guests, and giveaways and our call outs. And we almost unanimously had folks voting for personable hosts. So I want to pose this question to you all, as all of us being hosts on this show. And maybe this is where our Twitch chat kind of helps us out here. How important is it for your host to get along, feel competent, have a good flow? Like, do you agree with the results that hosts are one of the most important or impactful pieces about podcasts? Let's start with Gil.
Me again?
Yeah.
All right,
again.
sure. No, I think my answer is yes and no. I mean, a host cannot do anything alone, but a show without a host that can pick up the pieces and the blanks don't go very far. Because you have to be, that person has to impose enough respect from the rest of the panel where you are okay with them leading on. You can't be like upset every time that the host pull out in the way. So it has to be a dynamic there. And I think nothing works without some kind of a leadership or somebody who direct things around. And you can have shows that can have multiple hosts. Some people are so well in tune to each other that they can go banter back and forth. But there's always a natural person that strives to be the one who can have a conversation, the one who can quicken their feet with jokes, or can really remember things, because not all of us has the mind to remember little details about board games, or make a joke about something board game related, and all of a sudden everybody's staring blank. And normally the guy who's the host is the guy who normally remember those little things and pick up those little moments. So my answer is yes and no. I think it's more yes and no, but it's yes because I think you naturally have to have somebody who has to bring some direction to the conversation in one way or the other.
Okay. Chris, what are you thinking?
Well, as far as like the host, I mean, yeah, some of us are a little bland, some of us have, some, we're not the most funny people in the world, but I feel that it doesn't matter how good our content is or what we are trying to say, if people don't like the way we say it, or, you know, don't get along with our personalities or anything like that, doesn't matter how great our content is, they're not going to listen. So yeah, the host has to, the guests, the host, the panelists, whatever you want to call us, we have to have something that draws them in to us, whether it be our voice, we're easy to listen to, or we have, you know, we crack jokes that they like, or, you know, anything. They have to be able to tolerate us so that we can deliver the content to them.
Do you think my voice is good enough for this show?
Your voice is absolutely amazing. I dream about it.
Oh, that seems awkward.
It is.
Or really great.
Wait after
It's
the
fine.
show for that.
That's Geek Spiel After Dark. That's a whole different show. Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that we talk about that when the kiddos have gone to bed. Crystal, what do you think about, this is where we go sometimes, what do you think about hosts and how, like, again, as someone who is a host, how do you feel like your role is valuable or essential to that conversation?
I think the personality and the chemistry of the hosts on a show are the number one thing. And I think the subject matter is probably a close second, but the subject matter, like Chris was saying, it doesn't, if the content is good, it doesn't matter if you don't enjoy the conversation that's being had about it. And I think that was something that kind of terrified me when we started our show, because while Ambi and Cassidy and I did spend 9 months talking to each other online to at least kind of get to know each other, we were complete strangers for all intents and purposes when we started the show. We had almost not spoken even voice chat at all before we started the show. And if people, oh gosh, God bless you if you go back and listen to like the first couple of episodes. And admittedly, our production quality in those early episodes, I think, was pretty decent compared to a lot. But you can tell there's those awkward moments because we didn't know each other well enough to have a flow with the conversation. And none of us wanted to step on each other's toes and, you know, step forward and direct the conversation as much because we didn't want to offend one another. And I think I've kind of taken on that role, kind of like Gil was saying, as the quote unquote, like more vocal host on our show. And we've actually gotten some flack for that. Like we've had iTunes reviews that have come through and said, you know, Crystal should talk less. I want to hear the other girls are more interesting and that kind of stuff, which you're always going to get negative reviews on iTunes. And I've had comments about the way I speak and all this other stuff. And I do know that most of those comments don't hold a lot of weight, so I don't really dwell on them much. But obviously I remember them because I can pull them up out of my head right now. And it does stick with you to some degree, but I think at a certain point you just have to recognize that not everybody is going to like you. And for me, that's the case in my regular life as well. I'm an extrovert and I'm a loud person and I'm a very excited person about almost everything. If you mentioned the game all night thing, if you watch me talking about Star Trek, I probably had stars in my eyes the whole time. If I'm talking about something I love, it's pretty hard to shut me up. But, and not everybody likes that. And so that's fine. If my style of, you know, hosting isn't for you, then there's other people who are more low key. And I like listening to some of those low key shows because I think they help me strike a good balance. Like, I don't want to listen to people that are just like me all the time.
Right.
One of my favorite gifs is I had it like, I used it so much that I had to stop using was you guys are playing with Z and you go like the little hint thing. That thing cracked me so much. I actually overused it for a while. So it was just like incredibly funny. So you could tell you guys were having a good time. And
we asked Z to like just dance with us for part of our music video. And he was like, oh yeah, totally. Like I had met Z. I knew he would be down. And then when we started the video and we were like, okay, go. The three of us start dancing and Z just sits there with a scowl on his face. And I was like, wait, but, and then he starts dancing too. It's so perfect the way it turned out. It's in the music video, but yeah, that GIF has gotten a lot of mileage on Twitter.
It did.
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm talking about me feeling that pressure, because again, we Crystal, I feel very similar. We have a bunch of really talented folks on the Discord and able to create content right now. And I was just the guy who is like, yeah, I have the time to be able to quote unquote host, be there every time. And we've kind of picked this format for a reason. It does allow for some of that, like, let's not talk over each other 100 times. And, even on shows where it's more balanced, I still hear that one voice that comes out kind of more often, or at least kind of takes the lead a little bit more. And I don't think it's out of selfishness or greed or like this, I'm also an extrovert. I'm a loud person. Like, I'm all about it. And I think for us, it just creates a flow that we can, give an opportunity for everyone to be heard, and give an opportunity where it's not just like 6 people all talking at once and then suddenly no one heard anything that was said. There's a lot of pressure, I think, to be that host and to have that kind of functionality, but I think it provides, at least for me as a listener, right, it provides a better production value, and that's what I'm looking for. To go to our Twitch chat, one of the things that I appreciate about our format, what we do, is that we involve some of these pieces. I think podcasts are really easy, that they're so audio, and so everyone's just like, okay, cool, like, these are our topics, have a great night. But this is our way of introducing and kind of adding other voices to that conversation. But to go back to the chat, our producer Matt had said, in an environment, as Crystal states, it's really full of content. I don't need much of a reason to unsubscribe sometimes. And I think that's true, that sometimes having a host that you like, someone you can bond to. It's one of the reasons why we're trying to push some of the things we do on Twitter and social media too, is we create that community and create that following to where folks come onto the podcast because of Chris Cornell and Gil and myself. Folks watch Table Crashers because of Ryan. We want them to get invested in us. I think that's one of the reason that hopping a little bit off of podcasts, but going into the conversation of just, I think, these VODs and shows in general, I think that's why Critical Role and some of the stuff they do with, like, Vox Machina and stuff like that was so great, is that they had this routine of folks that you got to build a relationship with for 200 episodes, right? And you got to know them and their personalities, and they created a flow. And so I think when you have something like that, that's what creates investment, right? Like, again, you can say great things, but if you deliver it in a really corny way and that just irritates the heck out of me, then I'm not going to want to listen to you talk about it. And so I think that's one of the things that I really appreciate, and I think makes having a host that's, again, liked by and, listened to by their fans, is that it provides that kind of identity to follow. And I think that's integral into that conversation.
And podcasting is such a unique medium because, unlike things like TV shows or movies where you're looking at a person portraying someone other than themselves, in a podcast, you're listening to that person and you're getting to know them. And it's a very one-sided, intimate relationship. Like, before even I started podcasting, I listened to a lot of podcasts, and I felt like I knew the people that I was listening to, and I had to kind of at a certain point realize, like, I don't really know these people. I know, and in a lot of cases, I think people are themselves when they podcast, but not everyone is. I think a good example, Chris Michaud, who was the moderator emeritus from Flip the Table. I had listened to Flip the Table for years and loved their show and felt like I knew Chris really well when I've still never met Chris. Admittedly, he and I think, have become pretty good friends online, and he was a big help to us when we were starting Board Game Blitz. I reached out to him with some questions and things like that, and even though he'd never met me, he kindly provided me some advice, and now I think we've become friends, but I've never met him, and it's odd that I feel like I know him as well as I do, just because of the internet in general.
He does. And I see you guys were kind of like you just mentioned that you guys never met each other, which is incredible, because it's almost like you guys have a wide range of flavors for board games, because AMB like 18xx stuff. And does that help when you guys talk? Because you guys, between the three of you, you have this wide gamut of taste for games and things like that.
I think it helps make our content more unique than probably a majority of board game podcasts, especially some of the older ones, because a lot of podcasts seem to be a group of friends sitting in a room having a conversation with each other, and often they all played a game together and are now discussing it. And that's a cool and valid conversation to have, but there weren't a lot of people that were coming together from different parts of the world and saying, oh, I played this game with my friends, let me tell you about it, and getting feedback immediately from someone who wasn't present in that moment. And it's neat because then, oh, what if we both played the same game? Let's share our different experiences and how that went for us.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's one of the things, Geek Spiel, we have some of that, right? We have some of that. You've been friends forever. You live in the same place and all the things. Again, Gil and Ryan and Matt and Chris, you all live close. I've had this connection with a couple of different things. But then there's some of us who have, again, outside of the, see you on camera and have a chat, we've never met each other. I think for a couple of us, PAX Unplugged is going to be the first time that we're going to actually get to meet. And that's, again, similar, Crystal. That's almost a year of creating content later. Some of us are going to get to meet for the first time. And I think that does provide, one of the first things we talked about on our show was gateway games. And I think that it was cool to say, we didn't all have the same gateway game because we didn't do it as a group, right? I can see that if a bunch of my friends got on a podcast and were willing to say, oh, remember that time we played this one game? Yeah, no, that was a really great game. Like, that's the game for everyone. Whereas now we can say, oh, we had a combo about Settlers one time and everyone had a different response, right? And it didn't feel like it was this canned, full of inside jokes, like no one gets it, no one connects, because it felt like it was too just, oh, haha, yeah, we know this, So I think one of the things I appreciate about that difference, and again, the content you all create, Crystal, is that there is this, we truly have different experiences. Like, we truly have different frames of reference, and that's important.
But that relationship, it does make a difference for the good as well. I bet that, I don't know, I can't speak for Crystal, but I imagine once you guys met, it kind of helped, didn't it?
Oh,
I feel sometimes that it's good to have this broad, but it's good to have some kind of a connection as well. Like loosen up a little bit because you've met that person and stuff like that. And so I see both ends, and I think it would be nice to have a little bit of both, at least in my mind.
I would agree.
All right, so we're cutting up on our hour here, but I want us to really quick talk about maybe what podcasts are on our mobile devices / computers / that we've got downloaded right now. Pull up your list. We don't necessarily need all 40 or 50 or 60, but what is maybe your top couple? And then we'll wrap it up, Crystal, with you chatting about one last plug for your all's content. So I'll go ahead and start, and then we'll end with Crystal. One of the things that I've gotten, I'm going to go on both ends of the spectrum here, is the Secret Cabal guys are just, for me, they're just a consistent voice that I've heard for a really long time. And again, there's almost a credibility to, creating content for so long that it's like, okay, cool, I think I can give you, my trust in that. It's similar to what we were talking about with the Kickstarter piece of, like, if you've had, a bunch of Kickstarter funded, like, and you have this publicity, right, that it kind of just gives you that credibility of, okay, I know you've created good content in the past, so I know you're going to keep doing it. So that's one of my go-tos. And then again, it seems like, kind of what's connected us to the show. I've really enjoyed, and this is a plug for some folks we really care about, is the podcast Nerdy Point of View. They have 3 people who, will sometimes bring on some guests, have some really great personalities on that show. But I like that they don't always talk everything about board game. I feel like sometimes when I listen to the Secret Cabal guys, or one of those podcasts that have gone on a long time, that I hear the same content, or I hear the same things over and over. And when you just open it up to just random life, everything about everything kind of podcasts, like Nerdy Point of View does a little bit, I think you always are hearing something new. Again, whether it's related to tabletop RPGs for them or not, I've always got original content. And so those are two on the top of my list right now. One kind of probably mainstream and one a little bit off the beaten path. But those are my top two. Chris, where are you at with your podcasts?
Still, I mean, Shut Up and Sit Down is one of my ones that I listen to the most, I guess. I'm adding to my list, I'm going to definitely be listening to Crystal's podcast, just because, well, I haven't heard it yet, so I'm going to. Nerdy point of view.
Every episode is 30 minutes or less, so it's at least easy to fit in.
That's my drive
Gosh,
to work, so that's perfect. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to get I'm going to listen to probably 2 a day, starting at the beginning, like I did with Thread Raiders. I listened to every episode of Thread Raiders, like straight back to back. It was great. That's one of the things I do like about the podcast is you can actually, you can do that, and they may not all string together proper, but they're all going to be the same people, and you kind of catch up on a lot, and you really get to follow and see where they're coming from, and that's what I'm looking forward for you guys. But and I guess just like the mainstream stuff, like the PAX guys. What do they do? What is their stuff? I can't remember what it's called.
Penny Arcade?
Yeah, Penny. Well, the one that they do, the D&D one.
Oh, Acquisitions Inc.
Yeah, Acquisitions Inc. I love that. That's a lot of fun to listen to. I mean, I don't know if you'd actually consider it a podcast, but if you strip the audio out of the video, I guess it could be.
They're just a bunch of people talking for an hour.
If it's an audio, it's a podcast.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy it. They're funny. They're a little crude sometimes, but it is funny. Yeah. I enjoy it.
Gil?
Oh, I have so much. Before I tell my list, people might not think I list that many, but people that know me know I travel the country for work. So there's not enough podcasts for me to listen while I'm traveling. But, my favorite, hope Jamie does it. I go to the game night at the Secret Cabal twice a week, so that's my game group. So Secret Cabal is a must for me. Jamie and the Lords of the Dungeon got me into playing RPG and stuff like this, so they have a special place on my list here. But other than them, I do Blue Pag, Pink Pag is one of my favorite. I really like, and both Rob and Christina are amazing people. So they are what you listen to podcasts. Those are the kind of people that, sometimes you listen to podcasts, and I've met a lot of my idols that I list podcasts, and not all of them were the same people that they were in the podcast. But if you meet Rob and Christina, they are exactly what they are on the podcast, and that's a lot. So I'll go down my list here. That mostly so Pink Pag, Blue Pag, Board Game Blitz, Board Game Closet, Board Game Serial. The guy from Game Ruse, he does the Game Ruse on the internet. He has an excellent podcast too. Geek Spiel, obviously. The Heavy Cardboard, Rolling Dice and Taking Names, Tantrum House, the Dice Tower, the Hypecast, Secret Cabal. This game is broken. Is one of my new favorites. I love British humor. I love that, that sarcastic, naughty way of making humor. And so I think their show is just going to keep improving. So I'm having a lot of fun listening to them. So those are the ones I listen the most. Yeah.
Okay. And Crystal, why don't you round us out?
So I actually, as you guys were talking, I counted, and admittedly, this is not all board game related podcasts, but in the list in my app, this is not what I listen to regularly because they would be impossible, but I have 68 different podcasts that I'm subscribed to, which is just nonsensical. And I don't have the time. I don't travel for work. I don't have enough time to listen to all of them, but I kind of like to try and keep up with stuff and at least listen to an episode of a lot of different things occasionally. And a lot of those are board game related. And as far as the board game related ones, it's it's a heavy hitter that everybody knows about, but I have to mention the Dice Tower because I think they were one of the first ones that I really got into, and I especially like now with the rotating hosts where it's Tom and Eric one week and Suzanne and Mandy the next. I think it's made for some really awesome improvements.
And Crystal was a last minute guest. You did a tremendous. I have to give you kudos for that. That was a tremendous last minute. You did so well. That was like very enjoyable to watch, actually. I
had a lot of fun. Yeah, they do a video show called Dice Tower Tonight, and it's live. And 5 minutes before they were, Tom and Eric were supposed to go live, Eric's power went out because of a snowstorm. So Tom literally popped into the Slack channel that's for Dice Tower Network contributors, and he was like, "Eric's power's out. I need someone to co-host with me. Who is available?" And I had literally gotten home from work 10 minutes before that, and I was like, "Well, I'm available. Sure, let's go ahead and do that." And it went really well, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed myself quite a bit, and it was good. But I think the Dice Tower is great. Great Way Games is awesome because it's doing something different than a lot of board game podcasts. They don't actually almost ever talk about board games themselves. They just talk about topics that are related to the board gaming hobby, and I think that that's needed, and I think it's very interesting. Board Games in Bed is one of my new-ish favorites. It's incredibly cozy. It's Kelly and Becky. They're a married couple, and they literally record like they're in bed on a Sunday morning, like you'd be, cozying up and having brunch or whatever, and they're talking about the board games they played that week, and it's so lovely. There's a newer one that I just started listening to recently that I've become quite enamored with called 5 Games for Doomsday. And the premise is that they have a special guest on every episode, and they frame a discussion about them around the 5 games that they would save in an apocalyptic situation. And it is incredibly well produced for being a new show. So I'm really digging that. And then Flip Flory Super Saturday Board Game Series, which I mentioned earlier. And today they released their episode about the 2018 Sniffies Awards. It is an award show all about how board games smell, and you might recognize at least one voice as a guest host on that, and it was a lot of fun to do. And then I'll give a final shout out to Cardboard with Rich Sommer, and that one is interesting because Rich kind of does it fly by the seat of his pants style, but I just think it's really cool that someone that's famous for reasons other than board games also has a board game podcast. Like, I've called into his show and spoken with him before, and I was, trying not to kind of geek out over the fact that I was talking to Rich Sommer from Mad Men and and Glow and all of these other awesome shows, and the voice. It's almost like
one of those what is that public radio kind of style show, right? It's right.
Yeah, it's not as well structured as a lot of shows, but it's very genuine. And Rich is clearly passionate about board games, and I love listening to it. But I'm subscribed to a ton more that we won't get into necessarily.
I really like that Sniffies idea because, like, I don't know, like me. This is no joke, though. Seriously.
Oh, gosh. We're going to have a thing now where we're smelling board games, and I just can't have it.
No, quite literally. I'm in tech, so I do IT work and stuff like that. And nothing smells better to me than opening up a new computer and smelling the hardware. Like, no joke. Like, open a new laptop, new monitor, like a gaming console, doesn't matter. Like, even a DVD, I love the smell of, like,
all your smell is petroleum, right?
It doesn't matter.
Nothing else, just plastic and petroleum. Yeah. Yeah, they're just literally all carcinogen. Yeah,
but it's still the smell of it to me, like freshly opened product, is it's just nice. I enjoy it, so I can get the allure of smelling a board game. That's got a more earthy smell to it. The cardboard and everything. It's just
I'm gonna create a board game.
All the cellulose and just all that going to your brain.
I'm gonna create a board game that's scratch and sniff, just so that I can, like a true representation of something.
There is at least one game that came out, I want to say a year or two ago, that actually had scented things in it, like as part of the game, and I can't remember what it was called. But that does exist, at least in one form.
I was playing Pie Town just 3 days ago, And that game would be perfect if they had, because you can like remember
nice.
strawberry shortcake. They would have like things that would be awesome if those little pieces would have smell like banana and strawberries. I would buy that game.
We're trademarking this. Like we're gonna go literally again.
I bought games for less.
You don't even have to make a game. We just need to form a company that's like similar to like Broken Token or Insert Me, where instead of board game inserts, we sell upgrade packs with scratch and sniff stickers that are themed around specific board games.
That's amazing.
You can actually buy, like waterproof it, and with specific smell, you can waterproof all your pieces, and they will have scented specific smell.
Just think of Settlers with like a pasture and then like a mountain scent, and like I'm going down the rabbit.
Well,
okay. You get that pasture with the sheep on it, and then.
Nobody wants to play Dungeon Pets where you smell the poo. I'm pretty sure.
Carmen from Game Surplus gave me a Catan chocolate. That game was a hit at my house. There's nothing better than play a game that you can eat the pieces afterwards. I really thought it was a joke, and I thought it was weird. But it was actually a funny experience, a fun experience, I should say. I love Board Game Insider because it's nice to listen to Ignacy, somebody that has a worse English than mine, so I don't feel so bad when I listen to myself. It was interesting. It was fun. I mean, I wouldn't see that as a game they would produce regularly, but it was an interesting thing they did. I'm all for those kind of things.
What if we made Candyland actually out of candy? It's just out of Candyland.
I saw somebody tweet today, since it is April Fool's. I think somebody tweeted a photo of Plan B Games saying that they were doing a version of Azul with actual starbursts.
Of course.
Spicer Century Road. We can go all night now. I'm gonna have dreams tonight.
This is awesome.
Okay, Ed, to wrap us up tonight, Crystal, do you want to give a plug for Board Game Blitz?
Sure. So I kind of mentioned what we're about at the beginning of the show. 30 minutes or less, bi-weekly on Thursdays in the morning Pacific time. I think 7 a.m. Pacific is when our episodes usually hit the iTunes feed. We usually discuss a couple of games that we've played recently. They're not in-depth reviews. They're just kind of overviews and our first impressions or thoughts about a game. We have a thematic discussion about either a genre of games or a topic related to the board gaming hobby. And then I have an etymology segment, which when we started the show, I didn't know was going to be as popular as it is. I actually thought people would be like, etymology, what the heck is that? And it's the history of words related to board games. And it is one of our most popular segments, which kind of surprised me. I guess a lot of people are word nerds like I am. And and all of our episodes are 30 minutes or less. Occasionally we'll scooch a couple of minutes beyond that with bloopers and bonus content at the end of the episode. But the main content will fit within 30 minutes every time. And we are having a lot of fun. We've got cool stuff coming up for our 2-year anniversary. There's a very cool thing happening that I'm going to be doing that's technically not directly related to Blitz, which I can't specifically say this week, but it relates to something we discussed today in this hour-long episode.
Okay.
I just can't give it away quite yet, but keep an eye on, the usual board game media channels later this week, and it's pretty exciting, the thing that's going to start happening. And I can't say much about it, but I'll give a teaser.
She took our idea of scratch and sniff board games.
She's already got this. Like, how quickly can I mobilize this?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to talk about what's going to be happening, because something cool is coming this week that I'm a part of, and I'm very excited about it. So we appreciate anyone who chooses to check out our show. Ambi, I would say, first and foremost, is the heart and soul behind Board Game Blitz. She does all of our technical work on the back end. She does all of our audio editing. She is 100% the reason that Board Game Blitz is as successful as it is. I may be the more vocal of the two of us, but she is way smarter and way more talented than me in a lot of ways. And she also has her own YouTube channel, Ambi Rona, where she does board game song parodies, and they are top notch. They are so good. So if you enjoy board games and you song parodies. You should definitely go check her channel out as well. And then we put up video content on our YouTube channel and through the Dice Tower as well. We do Favorite Game Fridays. Ambi does Throat Punch Lunch. At some point, I might have a segment on Board Game Blender if I ever get my button gear and actually figure out how to do it, because my video setup here at home is not great. But yeah, so we're doing a lot of different things. We've been guesting on a lot of podcasts in the past couple of months, which is a little bit crazy. Ambi says that we're trying to take over the board gaming world. I don't know if that's quite true yet, but maybe someday.
You know, that's a great ambition to have.
And Ambi's husband won the strike tournament.
Yes, he did. Gladiators in an arena.
No. Oh, goodness. Well, on behalf of our panelists tonight, our guests, Crystal, and myself, Chris, a.k.a. Tiny Rhino, we thank you all for joining us on Geek Spiel on Air, and we look forward to seeing you on Wednesday for Table Crashers, 9 Eastern, where we're just going to play a game. I forget who we have this week. Producer Matt, can you tell me in my ear who we have this week? We have an opening if anyone wants to play. Yeah, that's a lot of planning. You talk about fly by the seat of your pants. That's what I like to do.
Well, it's Wednesday.
But yeah, that's Wednesday's problem. That's Wednesday Chris's problem. But yes, we have an opening. So if folks listen to the show and want to come on and play games with us, come join. Reach out to the Discord. Come chat with us. I see Solobon wants to play. Solobon, come join us. All right. So that's us. Have a great night.
Good night.